like, you know, like one is like this, and then another is like this, and then you would have an in-between, someone, I think they were called in-betweeners, or something else like a lower level animator who would essentially take these keyframes and then do the animation. In 3D animation, it still works the same way, except that you don't need, the computer is the in-betweener. So you set these keyframes of these poses, or in this case, these arrangements, you know, these scalings and transforms, and you set these as keyframes, and then you define per, and then by default it'll generally define a curve, an easing from one state to another. So sometimes it's not as finite as vertices, sometimes it's collections of vertices or objects if it has a concept of objects, but the core idea is still the same. You're taking one state and another state, and then the computers, and then you're sort of helping the computer understand in what way different things should transition from one state to another.
I'm curious. Can I ask some questions? So if I did initial state, like excuse me,
All right. Cool. So while you're in there, I got to keep Unity up. Pardon? When you're in there, I got to keep Unity up so that you don't get locked. Right?
but you don't want
I have to keep
legs to get
Unity
double thick.
active.
Stay the same.
Yeah, probably be best.
Yeah, we don't need to
So
bounce back
describe
and forth
that.
between that.
You said you could do the tweens behind it, but can you also say,
go
do
to
that out
first.
Can you say, okay, well,
Does this one have the toolkit in it as
you
well?
have to start from
Pardon?
scratch.
Oh, there's a different.
Have you seen the new SteamVR
So
examples?
that's sort of the limitation.
not yet.
with
These are
keyframe,
coming
that
in the SteamVR
it's
folder
sort of
now.
dependent
Oh, cool.
There's
on
two right
these
there, and
finite
then there's
states that you
one
define.
here.
You can't necessarily extrapolate. is what
Yeah, I
you're
remember
talking
that
about.
one.
And
With that, you would have to do the other thing that I said, which is essentially defining the weighting of different things, different
And then
elements
do you have a separate
of
project with
object,
the
and
toolkit
then
in it?
Uh-huh.
Cool.
essentially applying them all to
Then-
Yes, sir.
different
we're super
weighted-
nice and-
different weighted equations. So like,
Like,
I guess
given a number,
it'd be best
you know,
to, like,
from
turn it this
0
way.
to infinity or 1 to infinity, having that number be entered into an equation, and that equation resulting
Yeah.
in the different parameters.
clue.
that
This
you-
thing is like,
so
I wish I
actually-
had something taller so I
and
could
it,
stand
you know,
there.
If you put it right
from
here, I can
1 to
sit right
10
here and face it.
into an equation would make this thing
In front of
be
it or
like
whatever.
twice as big.
All right, how about with this?
But,
Yes.
and, you know, you have these equations for each one of these things, and, they may not show up as equations in circuit, but you're essentially defining these different, these
Yeah,
different.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's almost like, this is 4x, this is 5x, this is 5x. Therefore, you should say.
Oh, I can see it right here.
Scale, this scales, I scale 4 times. and then
You want to just
multiply.
present?
Sure,
Present
these
over
would stay
there?
the same, because
Yeah.
they're not multiplying.
Yeah, you're also, I mean, in something like this,
Take this off,
you,
always on
it
top.
depends on if you wanted,
Maybe just- I
so
can just
this
put
would
it
be
down.
sort of an interesting thing, because it would depend on if you wanted the entire thing,
Hit
so you
left.
can scale 3D objects on different axes.
Let's try this again.
And you can scale them with across multiple axes, where each axis is
There you go.
typically weighted.
There we are.
But the result would be that this would scale out,
Look at
because
that
this
pizza
would
tracker
also
over
scale.
here.
Oh yeah, what's the
Okay,
EPA
so
on
then-
pizza?
I wanna say, keep this the same size.
Then what you,
Modify the scale.
what you might want to do.
Oh, okay,
is-
cool. So, hey, everybody, we're going to go ahead and kick it off. Welcome. Thank you for coming out in this wonderful weather. You could be playing outside, but instead you decided to hang out with us. I'm Finn Staber. I'm a programmer designer at Portalarium and co-founder at the Wave VR, doing virtual reality DJ experience, the Wave. And my buddy Chris here.
I'm a developer for Unity Cloud Build and founder of Abstract Games.
Also VR noodler. So yeah, so we've been, playing with VR and chatting with most of you. If I don't know any of you, I'd love to meet you after. We just kind of really enjoyed messing with these things, lining up some other VR events at the Unity Austin Meetup group up north, and we just basically wanted to do more VR things. We couldn't just turn the Unity Austin event into fully VR, but we had huge turnout happening there, and we noticed that this is something that we want to be able to like sit down and really dig into and talk about the tech and have lessons on whatever, or meet the right people that are also engineers in this space. So tonight we're gonna cover the SteamVR plugin that's in Unity Asset Store, provided by Valve. We're going to cover the Vive input utility, which is an open source library that HTC Vive, Vive is actually, I guess, branching off into their own company from HTC. I heard something about that, I guess, but they have a really awesome team there making content development and stuff like that. So they've created a nice streamlined plugin, and then Chris is gonna talk about the SteamVR Unity toolkit, which is like an awesome assortment of example projects and a great way to set up like interactions and just the scene, and a lot of helpers and stuff like that. So it's super helpful. As soon as I dug into all this stuff, we were like, oh my god, have you seen this? Oh my god, like this is what a meetup should have in it. You know what I mean? At least for a technical thing. We have the big VR Austin, which is like the coolest networking and VR kind of event that I've been to, and I've been to a lot of the different cities and been able to like go to the Boston ones and just a bunch of different ones, and like VR Austin in the North Door, it's just freaking awesome. You know what I mean? But you don't really get a chance to relay a lot of technical information. So talking with those folks and talking with folks at Unity, it just seemed like the right kind of track to be able to offer this kind of group. So we have a cool lineup coming over the next 6 months that we kind of have planned out already, with a bunch of different awesome hardware partners, basically, hopefully sponsors, but right now we'll just call them partners until they give us money. And the PSVR is about to come out with their dev kits and libraries and sell them. And SteamVR has been just doing an amazing job with Vive to get Valve to basically pay for all these developer kits that they sent out to the crowd, to basically different developers. If you received one of those, that was basically because Valve paid HTC for one of those kits for you. So, which that's really amazing, that they spent millions and millions of dollars on making sure that there's a developer base for the Vive. But beyond that, they've been doing the OpenVR library, which really allows all hardware to be able to be built wherever. 20 new VR headsets next year coming out of Asia manufacturing plants that are going to be very competitive on price and have really amazing screen technology, right? And so if they're going to be able to utilize the same sensor tracking that these lasers are kicking out, and the same kind of tracking technology, then the price is going to drive way down over the next 2 years, and then it's going to be mass market acceptable. So right now it's very important to build some content and have that, try to ride that hockey stick up, right? It's very cheap for you to build the content now versus maybe 2 years from now. We're going to see a very similar thing like we saw with mobile development, where it almost becomes much less profitable to be in that space than it first seemed to be, which is like, right at the beginning of the mobile boom, everybody wanted a mobile experience for their company. I mean, it's still ramping up for a lot of other industries, but especially right there at the beginning, if you were an early mobile developer, you had people knocking down your doors as soon as it really hit mass market, just like, we need somebody with experience with mobile development. And Austin's really peaked on, or not peaked, but at a tipping point for being able to take off into that space, like as the leading sector for this style of game development. or interactive development. So that's really exciting because comparatively to the investment capability of the West Coast, it's just really amazing to see places like this, like Capital Factory and Tech Shop and WeWork. But I mean, especially Capital Factory, they've really fostered this, and they were just like, hey, come here, y'all have full run of, let's fill out this space, hopefully next month with some awesome sponsors and possibly giveaways, or month after next, maybe there's an opportunity for us to really fill out the space, give away some really awesome stuff while we're doing it, and still really dig into cross-platform input design. And so that's going to be kind of the focus on the next one, which is designing your experiences for PlayStation VR, Vive, and Oculus Touch, and other ones that might be unveiled that you're going to want to do. Maybe mobile headset, head tracking with hand controllers, with Ximmerse, or with the new Google Daydream. And so all these different kind of controllers are going to be coming out and proliferating in the market. So we figured next event would be a really good one to kind of focus on that, and like how to do that early, because early is when you want to start doing that. You don't want to like build most of your functionality and then go cross-platform.
And
It's
I
like,
think
oh great, let me rebuild it all, right?
I think that's why it's interesting to start this meetup around this point, say 4 months after Vive was released. Even though we're at the beginning of that hockey stick, like the importance of being able to understand this stuff before it becomes more commoditized later is important. And I think the reason why we started talking about doing this meetup in the first place was, there are showcases and there's all sorts of awesome developers here doing stuff, and you get to go play their games and you get to network. But in terms of technical talk, what you end up with is kind of a couple of quick conversations. You might find out, you might hear that, oh, it's easy, just go check it out, but there's still, where do I start? And it seems daunting, especially coming from, if you're lucky, you're coming from a game dev background on desktop or mobile, but even if you don't have a gaming development background and you're doing, VR video and stuff like that, it might just seem like too much. So I think it's really good timing now to kind of start with this intro, and then as we keep going, more things are going to come out. We'll try to keep everyone on the same level, so we can do cool stuff.
Yeah, hopefully we'll have big players. Oh, no, stop, go back. A little preview there. We hopefully we'll have some really awesome hardware partners wanting to step up and bring some cool stuff. I was at VRLA last weekend, talking with all these hardware partners about this event and about Austin's focus over the next, we have the ability to really operate at a third of what it takes to make the same kind of content in San Francisco. And that really means something. That means you can either work 3 times as long, and really spend the time with the budget, or you can get something done in a third or a quarter of the price because of the office space, because of the just kind of the quality of life maybe for our development types. So SteamVR, their plugin, it's a unified interface that will work with all the major virtual reality headsets, from seated to room scale experiences. Basically, they are partnering. They basically gave all this open source coding to Unity, to other manufacturers. Just said, hey, let's just make it open source and supply them with it, and even spend a lot of money internally making sure they have it and they have updates and they understand it and they have training and stuff like that to be able to make competitive headsets. So that's really awesome, because this is where like the Fove is coming out with eye tracking. We're gonna see, just like the Fove coming out, that they announced that they're supporting room scale with these sensors and SteamVR, and it has eye tracking. That means there's gonna be another one, right? If they have any kind of success, then you're gonna get 20 more. So really exciting that we're really seeing this kind of open source push on VR, because they want to unify it. So it provides access to the track controllers, the chaperone for the size of the room scale you have. render models for the track devices and updating the events to it. And Unity has their kind of streamlined raycasting and UI functionality that's an easy implementation with these examples that they've given. So that's kind of be some of what we're going to show off, because we felt like a UI and functionality and getting into it is just as important as that unique prototype kind of experience of that one kind of gameplay. Yes, sir.
So of like the more popular VR experiences that have been sort of announced, like the Wave and by the way, congratulations on the
Thank you.
VRLA. I saw all of that. It was awesome. But like among the more popular stuff, do you like, what of those things have been made on Unity? Like what's the different distribution of all of the different platforms for making this stuff? Like, for instance, is Google Daydream, or not Google Daydream, Google Tilt Brush, is that a Unity game, or?
Yeah, yes, Google Tilt Brush was made with Unity, and they have some really amazing things that they're doing. If you're unfamiliar with the process of how they built that, they really started with a cool little game jam style idea, and Google said, hey, will you come over here and work in our office, and we can call it Google Tilt Brush, and we'll give you like $4.5 million and a really great job for everybody on your team. And they were like, sure, yeah, let's do it. And they didn't move them; they just like set them up. Now they're a Google office. Really cool people. We actually partnered with those guys at a big DJ set after VRLA, and they did their like music interactive brushes, which it takes the signal of the audio in, and we plugged our VR DJ experience into Google Tilt Brush. So we had a DJ up on stage in the VR, and then somebody in Tilt Brush creating like cool abstract designs that were like splattering with the music. It was super wild. And the neat thing was that we set it up and branched that and did that in like 2 weeks, right? Which is like unheard of from even a couple years ago, even with Unity, which was the fastest and most modular. Now we're really seeing Unity's tools being so modular to just really take off. Unity Cloud Build, amazing chance to ramp up your development time, and there's some things you can do that will cut, a quarter off of your development time if you're an indie, which is like things like Cloud Build or things like starting in the right place.
Yeah, starting in the right place with VR is so important, especially with kind of SteamVR, because it is kind of drag and drop to get started. And Finn will show you, you basically drop in SteamVR plugin, and you're ready to go. So it's fortunate that we have kind of A, companies investing in this stuff, and B, kind of places where you can go get it. Yep.
Sorry, can you speak up for those in the back?
Sure, maybe we could even get a microphone. Is anybody from Capital Factor in here?
Oh, sweet.
Because by the end of it, we'll be like, yes, and then. Touch. Testing. Test. One more time. All right. Okay, so is that better? SteamVR plugin is the one we were talking about at on the asset store. This is its asset store page, and so we'll be sharing the slides tonight, so you'll have all these links. And so just go here, and is anybody new to Unity here? Okay, a couple people. Right on. Well, it's got a great learning path for their tools, as well as specific things for VR in their tutorials. So I have a couple of those links in here too. But those are really great whether you're starting or you're super advanced already and you just want to get into VR, or maybe you're already in VR and you just dig in there and you're like, what? I didn't even know that they updated the help documents, and it's really amazing. So I just try to really hit those things as often as possible personally.
Is Unity getting into virtual reality?
Oh yeah, I would say that
Not
they're
virtual, merged reality, I'm sorry.
mixed reality. Merged. There's every kind of, right? I'd like to come up with like a new term, right? Like X reality, right? It's like all the different ones. Or wouldn't it be cool? Or like
Real reality?
or like alter reality, you know? I don't know. There's
I like that.
Yeah, alter reality, right? And it's just AR. It's all
There's already
things.
an AR.
Well, yeah, right. So yeah, that wouldn't be confusing at all. So you know, the term mixed reality. I don't know if you've really dug into much of the coverage that's been happening on just that term, mixed reality. We were originally going to call this meetup group the AR, VR, MR tools and tech, because MR is a term that is being used to differ traditional augmented reality through a cell phone, through a screen, you know, like Pokemon Go or something, with something like a projected light field augmented reality experience. And so, but everybody else that's really an engineer or not a marketing person, they're basically going just, it's AR, right? It's either AR or VR. It's either mixing the reality with, it's augmenting the reality, or it's fully covering you into virtual reality, right? You don't really need 4 other terms, but there's likely to be like 4 other terms. People are going to call it meta reality, or who knows?
Yeah, and
right?
I think to answer your question, Unity's kind of stated mission is to make it as easy as possible to deploy to as many popular platforms as possible. So that's kind of one of the benefits that it's always had, is it's kind of this multi-platform, check a box and build for iOS or desktop. So adding on to that is kind of the Vive, Oculus, Cardboard, and then as kind of demand picks up for some of these hardwares and we land on which ones are popular, I think that drives the demand for which platforms are supported.
Is Unity like by far the biggest in its category, or what?
Yeah, I think they said last year at the turn of, or maybe it was at the Vision Summit, they said something like 95% of the experiences on the marketplace are VR experiences on the marketplace are made with Unity. So like, that's pretty nuts, you know what I mean? It's just super modular. But I guess that also changes of what you think of VR, really. Like, isn't VR, whenever you go to Google Street View on your 2D screen and you're able to like spin all the way around and like scroll to like move forward, that is really the same thing. You're just talking about controls, but it's still very virtual reality in my opinion, or mixed reality, or however you want to call it. It's that same interactive media, and I think as we get projected light field technology advancing, we're going to see it even stretch more. You know, projecting into the into your lens, and that reflects onto your retina is going to be called even something else, like retinal reality or something. You know what I mean? Who knows? And we have some extra seats, by the way. We have quite a few if y'all want to come on in and have a seat. I've been the dude standing in the back too many times.
Never fun.
On the concrete floor. So so we have links here also to the SteamVR developer forum. This is a really awesome developer forum that they've been pushing on to just basically have a great documentation place for errors, right? If anything, you want to be able to go somewhere whenever you have it break on you, which is inevitable. So if you're noodling with it and you're finding errors or something, just go to the you can just search for SteamVR forum, and this is the head one that Valve is funding and everything, and it covers SteamVR support, just basically a generalized VR developers set of forums, and the Steam specific forums for developing and shipping your app onto the Steam marketplace, which is its own task, as Richard Mady would know. Now we just talked about that whole process, and they got their cool new VR game To the Top up in there, so that's awesome. So yeah, so check out this forum, super useful, and I think you'll get a lot out of it. I sure did. The Unity VR plus OpenVR documentation, I guess you could say versus, plus or versus. These are the Unity VR basically supported hardware partners, and if you get past the can't quite see with the glare. So there's a virtual reality tab in the Unity documentation, and if you drop that down, you have some really useful stuff. in the VR overview, it basically covers being able to enable Unity support or VR support in Unity. You basically go up to File and Build Settings, and then Player Settings, and you can set virtual reality enabled. It's a checkbox, and once you do virtual reality enabled, basically what that's like, a lot of people were like, what does that mean, right? What does it mean, virtual reality enabled? If you clicked virtual reality enabled and you built it to an Android device and you hit play, it would pop up split screen and use your accelerometer on your main camera in your scene. So all you have to do to you start a scene, you start a new scene, it's created with a main camera, and a directional light. You could put a box in there so you can have something to ground yourself with. Click that virtual reality enabled and then build it to an Android device and it'll just work already. You can put it into a Google Cardboard just like that. So it's as easy as that, just to get your experience on Cardboard from Unity now. You basically just click that box. And then if you want to do stuff like Gear VR or PSVR or Oculus or SteamVR with OpenVR, there are little tabs that you drop down and you can add each one of those supports to your game. So you could add SteamVR and OpenVR, or add Gear VR and Cardboard, and then have basically your project has the settings for both of those. So whenever you kick out a build, it'll actually kick out 2, or you can just have that stuff on the Unity cloud and you'll get different emails with the links for your different builds. And so you can just say, cool, these are the builds, and then everybody does. So your whole testing team can basically just have that as you integrate, which is super helpful. So dig into this if you're wanting to learn more about it. This is great documentation, or if you're having something that's puzzling you with one of the pieces. Basically, just it's got some great recommendations and some things under VR devices. It covers the Oculus and OpenVR plugins. The Oculus is basically getting started with the Oculus or the Gear VR, and it runs you through and gives you all the links you need to set up your Android development environment in case your PC doesn't have Android build capability yet. You have to have an Android developer kit downloaded on there, and those links are in that page. Unity did a great job for that. And the OpenVR section, it's very short, but it's important. What it's saying, basically, what this is saying is that you can just like you can click virtual reality supported on and it automatically works for Google Cardboard. You can click the OpenVR support. You basically add to it, and I'll show you in just a second. And then it's supported for there's 25 different headset manufacturers that have announced that they're going to be OpenVR supported. So that's huge. That means we're going to start seeing $200 headsets, for your PC. So also, I just wanted to include here the Unity VR tutorial. This one is basically 8 different short VR tutorials. They're 3 minutes long, something like that, 3 to 5 minutes long, and they just really do a good job in keeping it sleek and to the point, and you don't get bored watching these. And it went over a lot because they have this example scene in the if you go to the asset store and just download VR examples. It's an example project that Unity has in the store, and it's got skeet shooter and a jet flying casual jet flyer. It's got a menu system with curved menus, so if you're trying to set up UI and stuff like that, it's got the models you'd even need for the curved menus, and it does a good job of accessing them both with the Gear VR, or you can do stuff with the Vive. So it's pretty handy. But if you're wanting to have some videos instead of documentation, that's a great place to go. So yeah, cross-platform VR. I think that's a big focus of where you need to be while you're making your Steam game or your Steam VR game, because the Vive is the best hardware you could get right now, in most people's opinion. The Oculus is awesome, and it actually, with OpenVR,
I'm running the same things, and you put on an Oculus, and it's lighter, and it's like you can't really tell the difference, right? It just feels very similar. And then in your little SteamVR window here, you'll have basically, instead of the Vive emblem, it'll be a little Oculus one, and two touches will pop up there in this window. So that's pretty cool that it supports that.
Is Vive the one from Silicon Valley?
I'm sorry?
Where's Vive from? Is that?
Valve or Vive. Vive is a Chinese. It's HTC, so the phone's HTC.
Somebody,
Yes, sir.
What's the, like, how does OpenVR affect the cross-platform thing? Like, if we're developing for OpenVR, that's gonna be a standard that's supported by a lot of different headsets. Do we just target OpenVR and then we don't need to worry about being?
Yeah, that way if you don't really want to, you don't have to add the OVR plugin, which is the one you download from the Oculus developer site. Like if you want to build for Oculus, you download the OVR plugin, the Oculus plugin from the developer site, and it's got like the same thing. It's got some great examples, and it's got some metrics that I like. I like to have them both in there and choose, like if I'm gonna make, if I'm going to do a build for the Oculus store, then I want the prefab to be supported with the Oculus's most recent prefab level that I downloaded from their tools. And at the same time, if I'm building it to SteamVR, I want it the most recent one. If I'm building it to Gear VR, I want it to the most recent Gear, Oculus for mobile SDK. And so what I basically do is I keep them all alive in the project, and then I build a drop down in at the top, and I just say build target, and I choose that, and it changes out like which prefab is going to be spawned in, and that way you can kind of plan around those prefabs for the controller setups. And so that's just one way to go. And we'll go into that in depth, and I'll show some examples, and we'll go over some example projects for the cross-platform input at the next event. Let's see here.
how many different types of these things actually are there?
Hardware platforms?
Major like Oculus type thing?
Well, I'd say there's really two out in the marketplace right now that are fending for number one, which is Oculus and SteamVR. And then really, whenever you think of a marketplace, there is no marketplace really. I mean, there's somewhat of a marketplace. They're finally for sale in the Microsoft store, but it's still a developer focus right now. Most people that are out buying a Vive are eager to develop on it too, or they have a lot of resource and they're like, yeah, this is the coolest new thing. But a marketplace really hits once you have, I think, the mass adoption for for people buying the hardware. And so the only marketplace maybe that's even there, it would be mobile, because the Gear VR is coming with the Samsung S7s, but those are also very new. So I think we're going to be next year before we really start seeing a lot of mass adoption, even though PSVR is coming out this year. But at the same time, once we see that mass adoption, it's just going to hockey stick. I mean, it's literally, there's so many people that are in this age bracket that are going to be very interested in it once it's affordable and they can fathom how to set this shit up, because it is not straightforward, right? And that's one of the things is like, people spend money only in a few different places in their lives, and it's usually in your pocket with your phone, in your living room, on your entertainment center, or in your garage for your vehicle. And people don't, generally, the mass audience don't right now spend more than $300 or $400 on a new computer, and they'd even prefer an all-in-one that doesn't even have VR capable support. So once we start seeing those awesome rigs go way down to like $600, they just announced a $750 VR ready Vive and Oculus machine, right? $750 you can, and that's awesome. That means that hopefully in a couple months by Black Friday, we're gonna see $600, maybe even $550 rigs, or if it's $750, maybe we're gonna end up seeing like for $1,000 you're gonna get like an Oculus with a machine or something. You know what I mean? They're gonna start pairing that up, and you're gonna be able to buy bundle deals or something. So that's really cool. That I think it's just super super nice to see that marketplace
Are
growing.
any of them more the size of glasses than these?
Not yet.
So his question was, were any of them the size of glasses? I actually have a pair of Epson Vario. I have a couple pairs of the Epson Vario smart glasses. They're the size of really big, like thick librarian glasses, I guess. And they have a cord to a little device. And if you've seen the patent images of the Magic Leap, those are also like glasses that have a cord to a device that projects through fiber optic cabling and projects into the lens. And it's really cool. It basically projects as a stereoscopic display floating in space, you know, with your forward-facing camera doing updates to the point cloud data, and it knows where to place the stuff and how to path it over to you. And it's the same thing that HoloLens is doing, and Epson Vario, Magic Leap, quite a few others that are, I think, working with Apple and whatever they're doing. They'll likely announce something by maybe the end of this year or early next year once they start seeing people start buying this stuff.
Yeah.
But I think it's not gonna be until Microsoft starts showing a gain that Apple's gonna say, no, this is what you want. And like Ashton Kutcher's gonna be wearing it and flirting with somebody, and you're gonna be like, that is the coolest thing ever, you know? So I know I'll want one, whatever it is. Like, if it works with my iPhone 8, then that'll be great.
Nice. Do we want to take a quick break and?
Yeah, how about some pizza? You want some pizza? I want some pizza. I want like one slice, and then. So how about we take 5, and we'll talk about this
I didn't
next
get any
section.
plates, so there's paper towels over here.
Oh, pizza's over there. I was like, I don't even see the pizza.
Help yourself, and then we'll take a look at some examples. Yeah, where is this water coming from? Oh, that's there. All right.
It's Mahoney, Mahoney.
Innovator.
I already ate. It smells good.
Good. Email me back. How you doing?
Conversations? Oh, yeah, we want to talk to you. Yeah, we're wanting to figure out when you have that.
Good to see you. Good to see you too.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Start talking about.
We have some. Toolkit, just kind of how you like map stuff. How's things going for you? Hanging? Yeah. We're supposed to get together tomorrow and talk about in terms of the concepts.
And I'm organized.
Yeah, I shot a bunch of content.
Actually, no, I just.
Been sitting on it. It's like 63 clips. Julia Robertson's name. Yeah. And projects I'm doing.
My brother's name is Jake. How you doing?
Doing good. Finished getting those prepared today. Nice.
I'm very,
Like, it doesn't matter what happens.
fascinated, came up with, VR. So my question is, will it have data support?
I've heard some PCs, they still have not shown up.
I know some clever people will do it one way or another, but whether it will come to a
I've heard that, I heard that, Oculus and HTC Vive, but how they are.
It's calm down.
I mean, I know They have this emo app.
Yeah.
They're, my understanding of Steam is they're basically worried about Microsoft.
I was like looking around here and they're like, maybe we should just have it somewhere else. Oh, where's the
So I think that they've kind of been concerned for like, hey, how can we clean up and go live?
So I just have to get it up on Steam.
Which I think, yeah. Soldered stuff together. I thought that was crazy. All right, cool. Well,
Yeah, I'm trying to code the community, downloading Meetup the other day. VR,
We're looking for that. Marketing has really branched off of
so, and that's the whole thing. There's a lot of people right now that actually have done any kind of respect. So, people we just take something involved in this industry, whatever creating, I think it's better for everybody.
I just thought of videos. So viable.
We're focusing on 360 videos. Nobody wants to just jump into this. We can sell this. I just had thinking of advertising agencies. We're able to, marketers can buy this content, put it on Facebook, participate right now. But
You know,
yes, they're helping. They're doing a demo content. So that's where the market is today. The marketing. They build machines. In a year when these headsets are Black Friday, you can get everything for $1,000 stuff. Then the marketplace will start to say for advertising for brands. I want to say this paying to experience, and then that's where. So one of my guys also started saying, "Oh, so." When we line up big, projects for big brands, like Domino's wants to do interactive. Pizza part.
I work at
It's that ordering pizza now you just like dream about the card.
We'll get started again in a couple minutes.
Then we are able to. I'm only helping Anyway, what's your name? Chris. Hey, Chris. Ricky. Nice to meet you. Yeah. But I've got a jam. It's actually my birthday, so I'm supposed to go.
Happy birthday. Everybody hit this guy on way.
Yeah, disarmed him. So, anyway.
No, you don't have to do that.
So,
Plug you then.
yeah.
Plug your company.
If you want to let everyone know about it, that'd be awesome. Just if they're interested to go, check it out. It's free. So we should have beer, a lot of snacks. Hopefully, we're trying to get Tiger sponsored and have some good snacks.
My family.
Okay.
Really? They're part of the
They're one of the part of the amateurs.
Oh shit. Yeah, I should have.
She's a Tiger and
I just they did. I reached open. They did 24 Diner.
24 Diner.
Yeah, God, they make good. Easy
They're
Tiger's
opening
like
up one of each of those up in the domain.
I heard. And Easy Tiger's like my favorite place. I was like, yes, I'm sure this.
It's the only good thing about 24 Diner is it's so far down here that I only come rarely when it's late at night. Now it's going to be in the domain.
But if you want some chicken waffles at midnight, you know where to go.
Now it's going to happen.
Want to pop into example mode or?
Sure.
Cool.
So we lost a few people, but we're gonna hammer through anyway. Thanks for staying around. Let's jump into some of the examples for some of this stuff. So the other thing that we're going to talk about that I'm going to kind of show off and then let Chris kind of run it away with it is the Vive input utility. It's a plugin, and we just realized it's called module. It's the Vive input utility on the Unity Asset Store. And it's a useful set of interactions. Basically, like there's an example for the teleportation, for raycasting very efficiently, and for getting events from your set of controllers. So if you download that, there's some different scenes in there. It works with SteamVR, and it includes like that mouse pointer and Unity event system. So we'll jump in over here. So we have this example scene here. We'll just run it real quick.
Want me to pop this on?
Sure. If you want to jump in, let me just pause and then play. And the controllers are off, but if you turn around and see the button, there's a button and two meshes, and if you hover over the button, it selects the button. It's the coolest, most interactive experience. The cool thing is it's very vague, and it has a UI canvas, much with Unity's just basic 3D canvas tool. So there's awesome tutorials on UI canvases, but it's just working like a 3D button in your 3D game, or maybe you already have a menu system for your game that you're trying to port over.
Yeah.
Now you don't have to like rebuild all the buttons, right? It basically works with the built-in Unity event system.
Yeah, so for example, I had a list view that would show up on the desktop PC monitor. That just to get it working, it was like a song selector. I was able to drop it into world space in Unity, and there's tutorials in there for that. And then you can interact with it with those laser pointers that you saw.
So yeah, if you check out this one, speaking of which, is there's a button and then little ray casted out spheres. There's a little one and a big one, little knobs, and then there's a window there that you can click and move around. And you can like actually click and drag that texture in the window and like move it around. So for like a map, a mini map or something like that, that would be really handy. And you can do a render to texture into that thing too. So if you wanted to have like, you know, something of the sort of, if you've seen budget cuts where you pop up a portal and it basically looks like where you're possibly going to teleport to in that direction, and you can look it around in it. That's basically what it's doing. It's putting that render to texture, and whenever you undo it, it basically screen wipes, and you're teleported. So you already beat it?
I beat it.
So if we go to Vive input utility examples and drag and drop. This one's handy. It's got like a menu system, an inventory system, if you will. You can like grab one of those colored cubes and drop it down into it's already yellow, but if you grab one of the other ones,
Gotcha.
and you're basically just dragging menu items into things. Very handy for if you're trying to set up some functionality there. So hard working on this tiny little single monitor. I'm spoiled.
You've got one over there too.
Oh, look at that. This one is you can basically reach out and use your grips to grab one. So you can use your trigger and grab it from the positions it's at, or point at it and use your grip, and it'll teleport to your hand.
All right.
So you can reach out and grab something with your grip, or you can just grab it in place with your trigger.
And grip is just these buttons on the side. You basically just squeeze it, kind of like you'd squeeze like a baseball bat, and that acts as an interaction.
You can
similar to
like
trigger and stuff.
interact with the other objects there, or miss them completely.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah, so it's a cool little thing. You can reset it. So,
Very cool.
but it's fun working with physics, or if you're building a spaceship game where you're trying to patch up something on the outside or something, that'd be kind of funny.
I think you mean awesome. It'd be kind of awesome.
I just thought of that.
Yeah,
I hope one of you makes it so I
Yeah.
can play it. Here's another little input. Your little teleportation, you're basically just pointing around and it's snapping to surface. You can snap over things and teleport around. And one more. That was it. There's another in the next section of the other plugin that Chris is going to cover. It has a lot of more robust examples of like the teleportation with an arced visual that you do in the Valve labs or some other games that Valve has kind of basically given that to over the last 6 months. They've have some of their internal team working on that stuff and showing up to game jams and stuff. And so for a lot of the games that you're seeing with the examples in this next plugin, they've been sending that over to developers, and then developers actually have been like refining some of it and sending back the source code, and they've kind of streamlined it down into 35 example scenes, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
So yeah, this is a handy little tool. I also wanted to show you, in order to use that, you basically go to the asset store, window, asset store, type in SteamVR, very slowly. Oh, and enter, that's an important one. And if you, the first one is the SteamVR plugin that we were talking about. And then here's the SteamVR input utility toolkit that we're about to cover. And if you were to type Vive, the first thing that pops up is nothing at all.
You need to delete the SteamVR tag.
Thank you. The Vive grip, Vive, all kinds of stuff.
It's the second one.
One
Scroll
question
down.
I had for you along the lines of input UI, have you seen any good implementations of keyboard text input or like text input in general in VR?
No, I have not actually. I've seen people have the 3D, like there are some on the asset store. There are some like 3D keyboards, like UI, and you could with this, like I'm saying, like with this, you can basically use that. You can pop it out and just use it just the same way. Like if you've ever played with the Vive and opened up just Steam, and you're in Steam and you're looking for things, and you see a buddy pop in, and you go to message him, and then you're like, hey, yo, and it sucks.
Yeah.
So yeah, good luck. I mean, until they have like good, voice command stuff, I think that's coming too, but it would greatly increase the price of the HMDs right now.
Yeah.
So
Unity just tweeted yesterday a link to Unity Labs that created a speech recognition wrapper for VR. I don't know how in-depth that is. I'm guessing it's targeted at Windows 10. But there's also, I've been toying with, IBM Watson has a speech-to-text where you basically send a WAV file, which you can record with the Vive, because it's got a mic right here, and then you get back the text. And that's still wonky though, because if you want specific terms that aren't like something that's familiar in general, that still doesn't really help you. So, but
Has anybody implemented does anybody remember the daisy wheel from
like
Steam?
the ball, typewriter ball.
Huh?
You mean daisy
No,
wheel?
from when Valve, or when Steam did big picture mode, and they had the controller-based input where it's like you use the joysticks, and it's got this like, looks kind of like a lotus, where like the letters are surrounding.
I haven't seen it.
I feel like that would be.
If you have a Steam controller, they sort of have, whenever if you're in big picture mode, you can use the touchpad to sort of like, it tracks your thumbs as you like hover over the keys as if you're typing in an actual virtual keyboard, like texting.
Yeah, I think that's the best we're gonna probably get with like touch input is gonna be kind of like a radio keyboard sort of, kind of like we had the first flip phones, like the ABC sort of thing.
So I dropped, this is the example project that comes with Unity. It's got like a car racer and a jet flyer and all kinds of stuff in here. So just an example of how easy this is to use, I imported the SteamVR library here, It's just, once you import it, it's right under your root folder in your Unity project, under a SteamVR folder. And if you go to prefabs here, they have a camera rig prefab. And if you just drag this prefab in, it'll drop down and you'll notice that there's like an example of there's a box around here, and that's your room scale space. So if I were to hit play right now, and let me,
I'm attached to it. We're going for a ride.
Don't fall over.
and then I'll move it left and right and make him totally sick.
Oh man.
Sorry, I should have told him to close his eyes
No,
before I did
I
that.
think we're good. It's kinda
Okay,
fun.
let me, that's not getting fixed now.
It's awesome.
So I guess, what did I do? I drugged it.
It has its main camera on, I think.
Oh, okay, that's what happened. There's another camera here, and since virtual reality is enabled, he was basically,
It just used
he
the
was,
camera.
there, even though we had a SteamVR rig in here, he was accessing it through the Unity OpenVR library. And that's also something really cool, is that you can have like multiple HMDs in the same, if we had another HMD, it would have gone to camera too, which is the other one that wasn't being rendered.
How do you hook that up? There's only, if there's more than one HDMI input?
Yeah, the 970 has 2 HDMI inputs. And you can actually run I have a converter that's DVI to HDMI, and that's what I'm running the TV off of, but you can actually plug in the Vive and have some technical difficulties. But it works sometimes.
Does it like linearly scale the performance, or does it make it like work half as well?
It probably will. I mean,
Okay.
at best
There
half
it goes.
as well. But,
It flew away. It's going the other way.
oh, it's gone.
Yeah, look around.
I see him.
Oh, there he goes.
Yeah. So now I'm in the box.
Then this time I'm gonna grab him and put him up underneath the aircraft. And I'm gonna line him up 0 here. And I'm going to say, hey, you know what? Let's put him on top of the aircraft.
Oh.
So now. you like immediately put your arms out. It's like, yes.
Oh man. Yep.
Oh,
There it is.
Why is he carrying it?
because he bound the camera to the.
Now I'm using WASD to move around, and Chris is gonna vomit his pizza up on him. Because one of the things you really want to do is really HUD the player. Surround them with visuals so that they don't feel weird and discombobulated. Especially if they're riding a track, he's just sitting there and I'm steering it, so he doesn't know what's about to happen.
Yeah.
And there's not much reference other than the horizon line in here. But basically, this prefab is just that. If you drop it down, there are 2 different tracked controllers here, controller left and controller right. And then there's an empty game object that it has a script on it called SteamVR render model. And so if this was picking up,
Controls right here.
so if I run right now, so if you want to turn on a controller there and put it on. So see, he's got the Vive controllers, and that's built into the plugin. But if you were to have Oculus Touch controllers, it would have they'd be little Oculus Touch meshes there.
Wait, is that out, the Oculus Touch?
And you can reach out to Oculus for a developer kit, and they're pretty awesome. Did you have a question in the back? You just checking? Sorry. So there's this prefab camera rig. Just drop it in. It's got the tracked controller objects here, and then a head camera, and then where your eyes are, the eye camera, and then an ear audio listener. And so you can have spatial audio support if you have headphones with surround sound and stuff like that. So very useful and sleek. As soon as you drag it in, you can then start putting post effects on the camera that is in there, or you can have your own custom meshes underneath, or you can hook those 2 points to be target lookers for your rig that's doing inverse IK. And so if you go into the SteamVR folder here, there are extras here, And if I make this smaller, I can read what those scenes are named. There's a little slider box here. So the test IK, let's not save that. Turn this on, and we can see Chris's arms moving around with IK. And that's pretty neat.
I always wonder why these arms spin all crazy when I move. I don't know.
I think it's I think they put that in there purposely so that you could see what is happening with gimbal.
Oh, okay.
The gimbal algorithm that creates inverse kinematic direction.
That's helpful.
And so whenever you access gimbal lock, it turns that off. Right? Gimbal lock is basically an addition to the algorithm that makes IK that can turn that stuff off. Very helpful to know when you're like rigging stuff too, and your bones flip all the way around and stuff. There's like a button in Maya to like lock it. It's like, can you just have that be the default, have it not fuck up as the default. And then there's like a little throwable object here, and then a trackable, it's like a white Vive controller. And so this is really handy in case you wanted to make something that doesn't have the default Vive. Yes, sir.
So on that topic, most Vive games that I've seen have custom controllers. Is there like a reference spec as far as like scaling and positioning that people can follow so they can make custom Vive controllers, but that essentially take up the same space and are the same size in game?
Yes, they have this. That is a model in here. So if you go to where is it? Assets maybe. Resources, or no, it'd be prefabs.
There's a model you can get online, and there's also like, I've seen like kind of like an open repository of stims and like
Yeah, let's just look at it right quick. Mesh. Oh, this is the aircraft and everything's gonna be hard to find in here. But,
So more than likely you would just
yes, you can have that. The thing that he's looking at right there, that's open source. They just allow you to have that, so you can do it. You can reskin it. You can put tassels on it, whatever.
I think if you look at like the Steam Workshop stuff, you can find like sort of.
Yeah, the Steam Workshop is actually really cool. It's got some examples. That forum that I showed you, there is one of those VR developer tabs in there is for Steam Workshop, and it has a bunch of examples of like downloadable OBJs for the room scale as well. So right now the default, if you just put it on and there's nothing going on, it's just a gray abyss. But you can customize that. You can make it your own. Whatever you want, and so you can customize that. Like, is it Hover Junkers has their own custom one that comes with the game. So whenever you hit something and it loads and it turns all gray on default, if you're playing Hover Junkers, it's like a desert canyon. It's pretty cool. And so there's some examples on how to set that up. So we're gonna jump back over real quick to the here, this demo video is also very kind of helpful to explain this is a VR, or this is a Unity menu system that's available on the Asset Store just for 3D, like in with your, it's already been there for a while. Like
Is it UGUI?
This is built on UGUI, yes, that was built on top of UGUI. But works with in-GUI callouts as well.
Would I search to
Almost
get
closed it.
Would I search to get that video?
That was the video under the Vive input utility plugin. So if you go to
It's in the
right here, if you go to the asset store, it's basically the first video that's right here. So the asset store for the Vive input utility is that's where you want to be. Very streamlined. In adverse to the next section we're going to talk about, which is 35 examples of some really cool stuff that you might want to play with. You want to kind of run the show, bro?
Cool. All right. So SteamVR, real easy to kind of get into your Unity project and get started, and end up with your chaperone box and your controllers. The Vive input module that Finn showed you, I haven't dove into yet, but SteamVR Unity Toolkit is a set of utilities and scripts at that GitHub link, and we'll send out the link to the presentations on the Meetup, that are MIT licensed, that allow you to do a whole bunch of things that when you start getting into VR, you start thinking, how am I going to do that? And then if you're familiar with Unity, you start trying to roll your own, or if you're smart enough, you look for someone that's already done something that's available. And this is a huge set of utilities that'll help you kind of get started. You can modify and contribute back to the toolkit. So since I started using it, there's some new things like 3D controls that you can interact with. And documentation is at this link right here, and if you could click on that, just because
The top one or low?
The bottom one. Because as we go through, this is a lot of content. I don't want to overwhelm you, so just assume that this is easy to put into your Unity project, following the instructions at the GitHub page. And then I'm just going to run through a categorized list of what's there. And as we go, we can load up some examples in the project, and I guess Finn will get in there and show you kind of.
I get to be the dummy on that one.
Yeah.
How much difference does it look depending on the type of headset or better yet, lightweight glasses you have?
I think in terms of like lighter weight platforms, kind of hardware, you might have a smaller field of vision. So HoloLens is kind of augmented reality, where you have lenses in front of you that are transparent. That has a low field of vision. If you have glasses form factor, I haven't seen through it, but Finn's use the Epson Vario glasses, and I'm assuming it's kind of similar, where these are made to replace your visual field, so you get some periphery, where if you actually have the headset on, you can see the corners of your vision, which don't seem important until you notice they're missing.
None of them are transparent lenses, where like merged reality. Where
Not
you look at the
yet.
lens and you see something on that reality.
Yeah, the desktop versions for now are basically blindfolds that just replace your visual field. But that will merge with kind of what you're seeing with augmented reality, I'm guessing, in a couple of years. And then you'll start to see this stuff overlaid in the world around you. So we've got SteamVR Unity Toolkit. Best part is it comes with a whole bunch of example scenes that show exactly what it's talking about. So this is the start. You basically have some prefabs that you can use in Unity that you get immediately, and then there's some scripts. So prefabs are pretty straightforward. You can drop in a canvas into your world that gives you frames per second. I believe it changes color if you can set a threshold, so if it goes under a certain threshold, it'll warn you. Unity console canvas is just that. You take the Unity debug console that you normally have in the editor and you put that in a canvas in your world. So while you're in there, you don't have to keep popping the headset off. Yeah.
Does that one work in builds? Can you build a thing and then see the Unity console?
I haven't used it yet.
No, you'd have to like, his question was, could you debug in a live build? You basically have to network in and then debug off of what's like connected.
Yeah, basically remote debug.
You could set up a bunch of validation tests and then have them throw and then still monitor that, but yeah, it's hard.
And then I also threw in there a radio controller menu, which again I haven't used, but we can pull up the example. But you basically have on the Vive touchpad, and so you can create a radio menu that the user can navigate through. Tooltips, you have two types. Object tooltips, you would attach a script to the object and basically give it styling for the line that's going to point at the object, what the text should say. So, pick this up. You can have a little tooltip that'll sit in the world space. Controller tooltips are that specific to the controller. So what you'd have instead, and I guess I could open the example if you want to pop in there, Finn.
Okay.
Controller tooltips are specific to the actual controls on the controllers themselves. Let's see if I can find it. Come in here. Move this guy out.
Oh no. Whoa. You just bumped the thing, I think.
Oh, did I?
That was
Oops.
awesome.
You okay? Yeah, don't move
Still
the
okay.
Don't move the sensors, by the way.
I'm slightly teetered, but
All right, let me just find
Okay.
this one. Take his pointer. see it. Do you see it?
Yeah, it's pointer with area collision. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, I was looking for the controller tool.
Bezier pointer?
The tooltips.
Oh, that is search bar.
Yeah, right.
There you go.
Seriously, I always forget to use this thing.
Controller tooltips. Boom.
Hey, that looks like it. All right, right here. So if we pop in there,
The Unity developer. I wanna
you'd be surprised.
maximize this right here. That little side of that button right there.
Maximize on play.
Yeah, now got it.
Wham. All right. Yeah, so right there you'd see controller tooltips, and you can say, you know, for the touchpad, I wanted to say this text. For whatever trigger, I wanted to say this. It would look like that for the objects as well, but just pointing at the object that you assign it to. So for all these scripts, you basically, there's a few of them in terms of controller. You're gonna wanna assign to a controller. For certain objects, like interactable objects, you want to assign it to the object. But all of the documentation makes it clear. Add this script to this object and it will perform the way you want it to. After that, you have controller handling. So some of this might be handled by the input module now.
It's basically, yeah, the same thing. It's actually the same libraries, but like stripped even cleaner.
Okay.
In the HTC the Vive one, it's like really streamlined. It only has like the 4 examples, and those don't really have much art around them. So it's like it's the same stuff as this, just even less content, so that you can kind of just see the nitty gritty.
Yeah. So Unity has a event engine built in that the controller events script will allow you to fire off events for a controller. So you have the ability to set which control is use, which control is grab, which is normally the grip by default. And then there was another one, it's use, grab, and grip. Okay, so the grip is a grip. The idea is you can say, I want the trigger to be grabbing an object, and then whenever you press that trigger, there'll be a Unity event that fires off that you can listen for. There's an example of a listener in the toolkit that listens for every event for every controller. So you can take what you need from there and say, you know, if someone grabs this Frisbee off this shelf, then, you know, this event fires and I can do something like change text that indicates what they picked up, for example. Controller actions are more handling the display of the controllers for the user, so you can do things like set it so that when something's picked up, the controller disappears and is replaced by the object they picked up. You can fire trigger haptic pulse, which lets you trigger frequency and duration of vibration. So if you hit something, you can control pretty finely, you know, relatively fine control over how you want that to feel. You know, if it's like a slow, like muddy vibration or a quick, fast one. And then there's Device Finder that will retrieve information about the headset and controllers and give you information on, I think it's, for now, it's like battery information and stuff. But that's just if you need some sort of information about the devices in the game. So I'm speeding through these, you might have noticed, but at the end we can look at the list of examples, and if there's any of these that you're interested in, just keep it in your head, and we can pop in there as well and take a look. So pointers. Pointers are laser pointer that you'd seen in the earlier examples. There are a couple of options related to pointers in the toolkit. You have a simple laser pointer. It's just straight, looks where you're pointing it. You can set the line, width, and color. The Bezier is the curved one that you might have seen in the lab to a target area. And then UI has the ability to interact with UI components that are in the world space. So I'll pull up, I guess, one of these pointer examples. We'll throw a pin in there.
Do the Bezier.
Bezier.
You got it. All right, so we'll do the Bezier pointer
Pointers.
example.
Like whenever I start reading about pointers, it's like because of programming, it like immediately makes you start falling asleep if you start.
Do that. So there's a Bezier pointer example, and that's what this is. And then there's also a custom Bezier pointer example. So you see right there, you can set kind of the tightness of the arc, so you can have it spread more as you're moving around.
It does a nice little camera fade for you.
Mm-hmm.
And this one is actually the one that uses nav mesh, right?
Is it?
So like I can't go, or maybe it's using collision. This is the pointers with collision.
Oh, right, right.
So like see how I'm like going until I go up over it, oop,
Mm-hmm.
then I can like go all the way over here,
Is this one
and then it still shows you the chaperone.
You can make these anything, spaceships.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
You can
so
bring
I
you
mean-
can just bring an architectural design in here and just start moving around in it. Like you could literally just take an FBX or an OBJ and just from your architectural rendering company and put it in here and then move around in the space with this prefab. You don't need to engineer it or build the functionality. And this is what I like about this. You could change this to like, if it was a different lit kind of environment, you might change this to be transparent gray, and then it will it'll be much sleeker.
Yeah, I'm gonna load up the custom example for you. So there's another one, custom Bezier. Get that open. And I think this is, does it have a different, yeah, so.
It's got an animation.
Yeah, so I think you're able to attach a prefab, I believe.
Can you jump on the box?
And it is height adjusted in here, so teleport, which will be in one of the next upcoming slides.
I wish I could climb on things.
Yeah, gives you the option to do either regular teleport, so all it cares about is the floor on your level, versus height adjusted, where if you highlight something that's off the ground, you'll also be able to teleport like on top of a box or whatever.
That's weird how it looks.
I think you're high. I think you're high up in the air. Is what I meant to say.
Man. Can't even see my eyes in this thing.
Yeah, so I think that I think the end of that pointer is a prefab that they had made in the scene, so you can get pretty crazy with the pointers.
Crazy with the pointer.
So I'm gonna pop
Can you get
that in
the
here.
gun ones? There's like the set of guns on the table.
Is there?
That's a cool controller event one. I think it's called event something.
Search for gun.
No, it's not. It's like grabbing objects with joints. No,
That's a terrible-
that's that other joke we just made.
Grabbing objects.
It's the
Snapping on grab.
no
Mm.
using a grabbed object.
Using a grab. Okay, that might be it.
That one. This one has some good examples of controller events for different things. Oops. Yeah, so here is a space age
Here's a
looking gun.
Totally a gun.
And I
That's the
shoot
most
the gun.
realistic gun I've ever seen.
It's pretty
You
sweet.
making fun of my gun?
I am making fun of your gun.
And this one, when it's not a gun, but it's cool. You pull the trigger, and then you let go, and look, it's still going.
And these are all Unity events too, so
I just found a
Bug,
bug.
it's a feature.
what you'll also see in the examples is kind of
Oh, look at that one. And this one turns it off.
Oh, weird. Yeah, so they give you useful kind of code examples to get started from. But fortunately, it doesn't give you too much where we're going to see like 80 games that look exactly like these examples. But actually, you might be surprised.
If you go to the, oh,
You go to another one if you want.
yeah, there was one more down towards the bottom.
Is
I think it's the,
child controller.
I want to host a game jam called The Shitty Game. Or no, not The Shitty Game, The Shitty Art Game Jam, where you can't use any art that looks actually professionally done. It has to look like blocks.
I would win that.
You would win that? I would win
Shitty
that.
art game jam. I would
We would win it.
I've been on a game jam where it was like me and 9 artists. And,
That sounds like a great.
the first day was awesome. I basically just made stuff, gave feedback, and then day 2 was like everybody made stuff, and I need to implement it all.
Yeah,
it was rough.
Yeah. So a couple more of these, and then we'll just bang through some examples. Is there any questions so far?
What would you use the other script behind this one, or would you just use this one?
It just kind of depends. Like this one is a great place to start if you're wondering where to start in general, and just like getting in here and doing things. You know what I mean, and taking it apart. But there's a lot more usage of intricate, like there's like some that are teleportation upon nav mesh only, and so it's like working with input functionality with Unity features is this example, and then the other one is like it's just the events, and it's got a couple examples of you just using it, but there's not like gameplay functionality. Yeah, if you want to like build something into your gameplay, I would use this one, especially if like for because of the arc teleportation. Unless I didn't want the arc teleportation, and then maybe I'd go to the other one. Like if I was looking for something to incorporate into my existing project, I would choose the other one because it's not really, it doesn't have a big footprint.
Yeah.
But this one has a lot of functionality scripts that you're bringing with it, you know. But you can have them both in the project. You know what I mean? And just use the streamlined stuff for something you're already doing, just to improve the event sniffer. Or maybe you really like the teleportation and you want to incorporate that, you know. So for the UI functionality, you're using the Vive input utility, and then for the teleportation and for grabbing a gun and start shooting it and stuff, you're using this one. So
is it terribly difficult to just take out the functionality you want from VRTK, or do you have to just you can put the whole thing?
You can just basically get it in. I mean, there's some things you'll need, like you'll need all the base classes for like controller type and controller input, and then controller events, and then you know the SteamVR has somewhat of a footprint there too. But I mean, you can go in there and rip out all the example scenes. You don't want all the art, you know. I mean, if you don't want that high res gun that I showed you in your game, then you don't have to.
I think you could also take. I think what you could do is take a scene that's using this stuff, and then it will pull out the dependencies that are required, because it's basically the abstract classes for stuff like controls and everything.
It's got some unique things with that other one though too. With the UI stuff, that UI scene functionality, very handy, very streamlined, which I've noodled with working with UI and interactive stuff, like with a lot of different VR developers just here in town that are like working on something, and I'll go over and like check out their thing, and it's like really awesome. They're like, yeah, I want to make it like where you can do this, and so like using a menu is almost like that's like the difficulty. Once you've been only working in VR, now you can like use things with your hands.
Right.
Then you need an inventory, and you're like, where do I even start? Even though you have all the experience to be able to do that on a traditional game, I think that was the big thing that Unity just recently said. Hey, all that 3D UI stuff, you can just use it, and here are the event systems for raycasting and stuff, just like using it like a mouse.
Yeah.
And what's also really cool about that is that you can test it with your mouse. I forgot to show you that in the Vive, but like you can use your mouse to test. So like if you don't have a Vive, it's on your laptop, and you're working on your laptop on the game, and you hit play, it doesn't not work because you don't have a Vive hooked up. It works with your mouse. Your mouse is this basically center, and so you can like move I think it's right click, and mouse movement is basically your head movement, and then left click is pulling the trigger at where the cursor is.
And that's a function of the SteamVR plugin, right?
I think it's in that SteamVR. No, I don't think the SteamVR has that. I think it had the Vive utility and this one both have that into it, where basically if you don't have a Vive hooked up, you can actually choose, or you can even in the scene, you can choose to like allow your mouse to use it. So if you notice, whenever I'm playing, you're seeing it full screen, but maybe you want to cut to this aerial view and not see what I'm seeing, but y'all, like 3 of you or 4 of you have controllers, and y'all are playing an asymmetrical multiplayer game where I'm in VR and I'm the big monster, and y'all are seeing like a split screen where y'all are doing something, or maybe whatever, right? You could be y'all with one other player where they're playing an FPS on a traditional screen, and I'm in VR, you know, doing something where I'm above and I'm like messing with you in the FPS things. You can
another
use
cool idea off the cuff from Finn.
Right.
Please.
Yeah. In the
That sounds really cool. So if you want to make that, I'd love to play it.
in the Unity toolkit, that functionality is called the simulator. I don't think I touched on it in here, but the documentation has. I don't know how new it is, but I didn't notice it until I started doing these slides. So check out both the plugins. I had also figured out in the process of just making these simple summary slides that I'm doing like 4 things wrong in the game that I'm working on right now. Or if I'm not doing them wrong, I decided to roll them on my own and then found the functionality that I was trying to build in here. So always like, the first thing you'd want to do if you're trying to familiarize yourself with this is just run through and look at the examples.
Is to host a VR meetup.
Or that, yeah.
You wanna learn something, have to talk in front of people about it. And you're
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
really learn.
Explaining something helps me understand it, so that was really helpful. So if we go into Locomotion, Locomotion's an interesting problem in VR that various solutions are coming out for, people solve in different ways.
You just parent it right under the jet.
Yeah, attached to the top of the jet.
Not the way you want to handle Locomotion.
Vomit simulator.
Yeah.
Headset collision fade would be if you're walking up to a wall and you put your head in through it, like you would clip through the wall in Unity and like be able to see outside of it. So this would basically fade out what's around you, I believe with the shader, and then so at least that way you're not just clipping through a wall. It feels like, you know, you're interrupting the wall and it's still solid.
It's a nice little fade.
Can you make anything translucent?
Yeah, as a function of Unity itself you can. So it will let you use shaders for different materials. So you can have a solid material, or you can have a material that has an opacity on it, so you can make it like glass.
Adjust it,
Yep.
adjustment for that.
And do things like reflection and stuff. Yeah, and that's kind of first class built into Unity.
Actually, one of the upcoming Unity Austin events that we're planning is basically a surfacing and rendering and surfacing
Yes.
event,
Awesome.
focused event. So we're going to be talking about PBR. We're going to be talking about cell shading. We're going to talk about optimized stuff like the art from Job Simulator to the rendering stuff that that Valve has recently released and stuff. So we're going to be digging into that stuff. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about surfacing stuff in Unity, we're planning to do that.
This is at the Unity VR, or
At the Unity Austin up at Mr. Trains.
Cool. And that's great because there's no real good intermediate level shader information I found online. Like if you're a beginner, there's a bunch of information. If you're an intermediate, there's a big gap, and then you're an expert and can't understand anything anyone's saying. So that would be a very cool event.
Everything's all white papers.
Yeah. So Locomotion, there's a few options in here I'll run through. Teleport, like you were seeing with Finn's example, Bezier curve. Basic will teleport you on X and Z axis. It will ignore if your pointer is on top of an object that's higher than you. Where height adjusted will actually pop you up on the y-axis as well, so you could do things with the pointer saying, I want to go up on this box, and it will forward you over there, taking into account that it's higher than you. So the Bezier curve, one of the useful things about that pointer is you can actually curve it up to something like a rooftop that's next to you, where the simple pointer, you're just pointing at the wall and you'd never be able to point up there. So teleport with the pointer, tried and true. I mean, first thing that was possible really quickly. You've seen a lot of the implementations fade you out and then move you, and that's to keep from being disoriented from all of a sudden being in a new place or moving there. You have a touchpad walking script that I believe you attach to the controller, and then these circle buttons on the Vive controller are pressure sensitive touchpads, and they're also 8-axis D-pads sort. So you're able to walk just by moving your thumb on top of the touchpad. Player presence basically just gives you an actual body that will collide with objects in the space, so you can put an object with a collider on the ground, and it won't let me walk through it if I like touchpad walk through it, etc.
Is the touchpad actually pressure sensitive, or is it just have a button?
It's pressure sensitive on an X and Y axis, so whenever you're
You want to hold it?
whenever you're pressing down but not clicking on it, you get an X and Y value for where your thumb is touching on the pad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, but also the click is actually a separate event, so you have pressed and unpressed.
Also, anybody want to make like a little clip holster for the Vive?
It's a cowboy.
Why did they come up with that shape?
I thought about that, but I don't.
You'd have to ask Valve and HTC.
Some of y'all got 3D printers, I know.
Sensors all around that hole.
Yeah, it's
Well,
to keep
yeah,
the circle of sensors
The
always pointing
lighthouse
in one
and
of
the
these.
lasers detect all of the sensors around here, and then it's just a stick.
Player climb.
essentially.
Yeah, that one's
Stick in a
new
range.
actually.
Better than a mouse?
You done with this?
It is completely different than a
There's
mouse.
two
It
more.
serves a completely different purpose.
I think, so Room Extender
It is not
basically
better, it's just different.
allows you to move, basically move the space with you, to create a bigger space than you may normally have in the room scale. And Player Climb is new, I actually didn't know this was in here. But you can create objects that are flagged as climbable, and actually just, climb up a wall. Do they have an example of that? I wanna see it, cause I didn't know it was in there at all. Are you guys using this? Okay.
No, they're doing a very different thing. It feels like, from what I've seen, it feels like you're controlling the world. with
Oh,
your
like
arm.
you're pulling it?
Yeah.
Oh,
Which is very different.
Let's see how weird that looks.
There's also a really cool movement example of a game that I got to try. I forget where Dan said it was, but basically the functionality for walking along is you move across the room scale, and then when you're at the end, you can hold the grip, and then it fades out to 50% transparent, and you can see just the chaperone that you drew out for your room scale. The little grid line pops up, and everything else fuzzes out. So you pop it up, and then you can like turn around to see which angle you want. But the whole world that you were facing comes with you, right? So like I want to walk way over there, and I can go like is this far? And I can hold it, and then I can keep on walking all the way over there.
That's cool.
And you don't even do it. You just can sit here and do it, and keep on walking in the same direction. And you don't recognize this. You're
How
just
long
like
is it-
boom, and you can walk back and forth, and you do not feel like that's what you're doing.
How
It's
long
really
does
cool.
it take you to like get used to that?
Like I do this, and I'm like, oh, cool. And that's about it. The first turn, you're like, okay, that's about it. And then once you start really doing it to like finite control, be like, oh, let me, you know, I mean, you're walking along, and then the example they had like a little stone path with an abyss, so you're like navigating the whole stone path that's long.
I
Pretty
played a cool VR pool game that had an interesting mechanic where you would grab 2 points in space and then just sort of swim around and rotate yourself and the world
That's
around this thing.
I tried to do that, and I couldn't figure out a way not to make myself sick when I was doing swim stuff. Yes?
The Vanishing Realms has an awesome player experience where you can climb ladders and go through different parts of the castle.
Yeah.
It's pretty nice. But again, it's just like a point and click, and then all of a sudden you're transported to it.
I really like the budget cuts. Has anybody played budget cuts?
Yeah.
That's, in my opinion, the gold standard for that type of teleportation. You basically have the arc, and then you throw something. Like when you let go, it actually shoots the portal over there and goes, and you see it go, blah, and then you see it right here open up, blah, and you can see like what it would look like there, and look, and then like let go, and it goes, and it like envelops you. And it's just a really cool transition that you never see the blink, because you're already looking in that direction over there. Just really cool.
Yeah.
They use that mechanic in a really interesting way, and for doing other things besides locomotion, like being able to take off a vent and then shoot the portal in there, and then actually essentially have a camera inside of a room that you can't see.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Neat.
Really, really cool. I love
Yeah,
that
and
game.
also, I mean, so those are, the few, the few generic methods that they've put in here for you to work with, but understand that, it's possible to be creative and imaginative with how people travel. These things aren't set in stone.
And in fact, if you download this and you noodle with it and send it back to them, they're incredibly receptive, and
Yeah.
you might see your experience in a future Unity store update.
They also have a Slack team as well, so you can just get an invite from their GitHub page, and there's a bunch of people in there that are really cool to talk to with this stuff, especially if you're like confused about something, or, am I crazy? No, this is missing a feature, whatever.
Very active.
It's very
Very
cool.
active developer forum there.
So interactivity, I think, is gonna be the last one. That is controls. All right, so interactivity, just the ability to set an object as an interactable object. And what that means is the controller action, or the controller events that I mentioned earlier, will allow you to interact with that object. So if you touch it by hovering, like colliding with the object, it will fire events. If you grab it versus use it, it'll fire off different events. So the gun on that table is an interactable object, and it had a listener that whenever you press the use button, it would set it to fire that bullet, for example. Controller actions allow setting which control does which. So controller actions are when you say, I want grab to be the grip action versus pulling the trigger. You determine that per controller. And then just Unity events are emitted that you can listen to. And they have examples of example listeners that you'd be able to put into your project and, you know, debug out to the console. Like I hovered over this touchpad and then I pressed it and it was at this value, etc. So this kind of goes into heavier detail in the documentation that we won't get into. But just know that interactable object is a script that you would add in order to make something interactable with the controllers.
Yeah, and it's got little drop downs of interactive grip, interactive trigger, and you can author those things in a very modular way.
Yeah.
Super helpful.
Yeah.
And it's interactive with your mouse. So like I said, whenever you're testing,
Right.
you know, and you're not trying to put on the VR headset and you just, you know, you're setting up a puzzle or something and you click it and you move, it's the same thing as like clicking it and moving it to the left. It's just using your mouse.
And I need to honestly look into that stuff because I'll always be the one kneeled in front of my keyboard with this thing slipping on my head because the center of mass is just off. And I'm like trying to type and it keeps going.
I've actually
like that.
found that like with my standing desk, I can just kind of like leave it there. I'm like sitting there working, somebody walks in, I'm like, hey, what's up?
Yeah, the worst part is if I'm like trying to test something
Just
and
looking through
then
the nose thing.
you look through the nose thing at the console to see if there's like the status bar at the bottom is red text. You're like, oh man.
Turn the Tron though.
Or you get hit and you're like,
Yes.
yo, dude, what's up?
Wait, is there a camera on the thing?
Is it correct?
Something
There is,
else I
there's a pass-through
probably-
camera as well. But
Have you ever
that's not,
tried
I mean, I could see right here if I
Yeah.
could do that.
right here.
The camera on it is like it's really crappy, so they put like a filter on it, so it looks like everything's in Tron, like just two color.
Yeah, it's kind of like infrared.
Is it more for object detection rather than actual vision?
I think so.
Yeah, you can. I mean, you could. There's a feed you can actually use that comes out of that camera. It's just not great resolution. But then there's also a mode where, like, if you're walking close to this chair, you'll see it kind of light up in front of you, which I should use more because I just have standing room only when I'm working. The last thing that we'll go through, and I think we've got until 9.
Yeah,
Yeah, we gotta wrap it up, but this is just a control system. There's an abstract class called VRTK control. All of the toolkit scripts start with VRTK underscore, so you'll see it everywhere. So currently they have buttons, they have chests, so like something with a lid you can lift up, hinge doors, knobs, there's probably a knob on the door, levers and sliders. So you just get kind of these 3D interactable objects at a base. This control set is probably going to blow up and have a whole bunch of other things in it soon, just because of how fast this thing updates. And they can somewhat auto-configure, which means that, for example, if you just drop a slider in, it will try and determine its min and max points automatically, and then show you in the editor whether that thing has a valid control configuration or not. So if it's invalid, it'll come up as red. That means you either have to go in there and set something yourself, or yellow means, okay, you could use that, and it would spit out events for you pretty quickly. Yep.
The classes in these various things. So correct me if I'm wrong, but the Vive's controller, the triggers, there's a pull on it, but at the end, at the apex of it, there's actually a binary button, right?
Yeah, basically, in the framework, in the class, there is an event that signifies that you've pulled the trigger.
Mhm.
Is as a one shot is what you're asking for, rather than the axis. There's both the axis and the one shot of pulling the trigger.
Yeah.
At the right, where at the bottom where you
Right.
like click it. That okay.
Right, but it's not really. I mean,
I think it's more to
I've just
separate
heard that that's
the,
a difficult thing to like. It's not.
yeah. Actually,
a
if you
common
feel
thing.
it, you can
Clicks.
feel it, and then you get a nice little soft little click at the
yeah,
end.
and I think it's still the axis value, because the triggers like this on like 360 controllers, same sort of thing, they'll be just 0 to 1 axes that you're pulling on for analog sensitivity, and I think that click separates the full
Yeah, but like
you're on.
you really want to set up, like if you're doing fire 1, you don't have to push it all the way to get fire 1. You can go like click, click, click. That way if you're like boom, 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 you don't want to like, since you're halfway squeezing it, it didn't register your trigger pull, because maybe you're just like,
Yeah, and in
you
that
want it
case,
shooting
you would
every
just
one of
do-
those, right?
You would just do like a get touchpad access and say if it's over, you know, a certain float value, 0.3, means it's 30% pulled down or whatever. So yeah.
So just to look real quick, also over in the project here, if you drop down scripts, let me expand it here a little bit more. Scripts here. There are a set of these different gameplay functionality, basically, if you want to think of it, like an interactive functionality that's a one-off, that's like, this is the gameplay of teleporting with an arc bezier that controls the arc specifically and stuff like that.
Yeah, these
That's
are
a-
basically associated with all those bullet points on those slides.
That's in those, and then if you drop down these controls for like 3D controls, then it goes a little deeper to like just a VRTK button, a VRTK chest, like opening a box, a VRTK lever, a slider, you know, for like these are 3D objects, versus the 2D controls are the like radial menu controller. And very similarly to this structure over in the Vive input utility, it has 2D controls, and it has like, it's basically just a mouse pointer. Like it just turns this into your mouse pointer. It's a 3D mouse pointer, just as if you had a 3D screen in your isometric game. You know, maybe it's a first-person shooter with a menu like Crysis that pops up a radial menu up in front of you, and you were using, you know, your thumb. Well, it's that. You're just controlling it with that, because it's a distance away from you, and then you're ray casting out to it with that little ray and ball. So you can really design the same style of menus, or even port menus over. That's also something that's very useful, because there's a lot of existing IP that's really cool that doesn't have to be such a stretch to rebuild its functionality, because you can still access all the menu components.
Yeah.
And that's big.
I would just say to be careful with Unity GUI in VR, kind of like that button functionality or the ability to use a slider or a checkbox is pretty straightforward, and people can get used to it pretty quick. But if you start getting into things like scrolling list view and stuff like that, you're getting into functionality where you have to do one function to like drag the list view versus another one to select, and that gets confusing really quick. So something for like a settings menu, this is great for. You have sliders and checkboxes and everything.
This is
But
like
for
the
more
Mecca.
complex menus, you might just want to put it in just to make sure that things still work. Uh-oh,
I don't know what's up with the red ones.
it's dangerous.
And then that thing.
It's a bomb.
So ridiculous. Yeah, so we don't have much time
So
to
yeah,
go through any of the other
we did
examples,
want to,
but-
have a little bit of an opportunity. Again, some of the stuff that's coming up. We have a cool panel here, actually, tomorrow night on why Austin is quickly becoming the center of the universe for AR, VR development, which is pretty awesome. And then next week, is it Tuesday or Wednesday, is another new meetup group focused on 360 video and like marketing, bringing they're going to be covering quite a few different things with interactive 360 video, mixing 3D objects into your 360 video experiences, and there's going to be, I think, a lot of other industry people represented at that event, because that's a place right now that there is a marketplace, and for a developer, I'm having my door beaten down by marketing companies that want to make some kind of 360 video experience for their whatever.
Yeah.
It's really hot right now, right? So that would be a good one to go if you're if you're an indie developer or you're a contract developer looking for clients. There's going to be some people looking for clients there. That said, if you is there anybody here that's representing a company that is looking for developers? So I am as well, a couple other people. Would you like to stand up and say something about your what you're looking for? Please.
So my name is Murray Bride. I'm with a company actually in San Antonio. We're doing some VR stuff. We're doing a lot of AR stuff right now. We have projects that are current, and we have some upcoming projects. And it's a big variety of stuff. We work with like American Museum of Natural History. We've worked with National Geographic to do AR stuff. We work with big dinosaur animatronic stuff. We also do some touchscreen things. So we have a lot of projects. So if you're interested in working in any kind of capacity, I'd be willing to talk to you. But we're also developing some things in VR. So come to me after the meeting and we'll talk.
What's the company?
Oh, Geo Media. San Antonio. Sorry.
Cool. Geo Media. Anybody else? Like John?
Yeah, we're on an interface. We're doing projects right now with drone controllers. We're doing a project for NVIDIA, doing a project for Unity, and we will have some other projects coming up in the automotive and the medical industries. We're working out of Houston with the HTC Foundry. So if you're interested in getting in this VR space, and you know Unity or Unreal, but preferably Unity, then we're also moving and we're having a hackathon that's coming up, and that's in the architectural engineering and construction space. That is twice the size of this VR industry. It's a $300 billion industry. If you guys want to come to it, please come. This is for you. Show your wares September 9th. Come to City Hall. That's where it's going to be in the evening. It's a kickoff event. There's prizes, and there's going to be people headhunting there, looking for great. There's people who walk away from that event with six-figure jobs.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
please come out. Use your huge skills in an industry that's dying to have huge skills in a real way that's paying for it today in projects. And please come out, talk to me. I've got a flyer here if anybody wants to know about it, and I'll give you information. And when you come, I will try to hand walk you to people that you would like to meet and with those companies.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah,
Awesome.
his studio is doing some cool Minority Report style functionality with UI and stuff. So they're doing some really cutting edge, interesting stuff. Anybody else?
My name is Anil, and I work for a company called Mark. We're based in Germany, and we are trying to get into the VR space to actually improve our patient experience doing projects for products that we do. So we just came here to Austin, and we want to get into the VR space, hire some developers, and get it going probably pretty soon.
Nice.
That's Merck, the pharmaceutical.
Right.
Cool.
How do you spell that?
MERCK.
MERCK. Cool. That's awesome to see. Pharmaceutical space getting into this industry. Like I said, all other industries are going to want a footprint here because it's very hot. It's very difficult for your average developer to do. So I think Austin is really at a great tipping point. Like I said, we are hiring as well. TheWaveVR.com. We are looking for senior level engineers with Unity and server programming experience. So if you're interested in making cool virtual reality DJ music creation kind of stuff, please feel free to reach out to us and push us your information, and we'd love to talk to you. I think, thank you very much for coming out. Again, some of the upcoming things I think would be very useful to be at, and I hope to see you there. I think maybe Buffalo Billiards is the kind of common meetup place from here. So if you're all looking to grab a drink, I think that's the transition zone if y'all want to move out and talk. But otherwise, we pretty much have to just like immediately get out at 9. The Capital Factory likes to clean up and be done with their job because I think they only get paid till 9. So you don't want to push on them. But thank you very much for coming out, and until next time, let us know what you think. Thanks.
All right.
You gave a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Really good.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Thanks for the questions. Maybe. Let's see. You want to get kicked out? No, I think everyone will gradually migrate out. Which company you I work that car's full.
Oh, okay. Yeah, feel free to reach out. That's my personal.
Yeah.